What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and to another Overwatch League discussion video. Today I'm going to be bringing back a topic that many of you seemed to enjoy last year and that some of you have requested for me to do again this year. We had some pretty sick matches in Season 3. Even through the rough times, certain matches really came through for us and provided some peak entertainment. In this video, I'm going to highlight 5 of the best matches from 2020. In other words, they're 5 of my favorite games, or 5 of the most entertaining, if you will. It's just my personal taste, and that means you might disagree, which is totally fine. After all, these aren't the 5 best, it's 5 of the best games. So, I tend to rate the games that are close very highly, as well as the ones with good storylines, which is something you'll notice very quickly with my list. Oh, and a fair warning, a couple of teams pop up more than once, so sorry in advance if that bothers any of you. So let's get into this thing, shall we? In no particular order, here are, in my opinion, 5 of the best matches from Season 3. Starting us off is the Philadelphia Fusion versus the Paris Eternal in the Summer Showdown Finals. I mean, this was probably the most obvious one on here. What kind of list would this be if it did not make an appearance? Not only is this one of the best games of the year, but also one of the best I've seen, period. In my opinion, it's one of the greatest of all time. We're talking instant classic status. The Philly versus Paris rivalry was my favorite in Season 3. Everything about this game was so perfect, and it kind of just embodies that type of rivalry. It was super back and forth all game, it goes to a map 7, and the story enhances it even more. On one side of it, you have the Fusion doing everything within their power to break the curse and finally get that ever so elusive first place finish in a tournament setting. Coming up short of something that has plagued this team for their entire existence. Coming into this game, they came in second in the Stage 2 playoffs of Season 1 and the Grand Finals of that same year. Not to mention that they fell flat in other important games like the 2019 Play-In Tournament and the May Melee semifinals. It's a common source of pain for all Fusion fans, but this time felt like it could be different. The Shock had been eliminated, and the Paris Eternal were an opponent they knew very well. They had given them a lot of trouble in the past for sure, but the Fusion had their number in 2 out of the 3 meetings before this fated finals matchup. It wouldn't be easy, but Fusion fans definitely did have reason to believe this was winnable. On the other side of it, Paris fans were probably feeling rather confident as well. The team was really hitting their peak performance-wise. They all genuinely appeared to be on the same page. Exy and Sparkle made for a sick playmaking duo, while the rest of the team gave them the support they needed through amazing consistency. After toppling the Shock of all teams, I'm sure just about every single Paris fan you'd talk to at that current time period would say that they were feeling confident they could win it all. Given that their opponents were Philly, I'm sure they definitely were a bit nervous though, but the same does apply to the Fusion as well, so it kind of does even out. So what happens when 2 teams of this caliber clash? 2 teams of extreme willpower squaring off in a 1-to-4 series. Absolute insanity is the answer we're looking for. No team could get the edge. Whenever one team seemed like they're on the verge of taking over, the other would respond and turn the tide. The best analogy I can think of is an immovable object versus an unstoppable force. Both teams wanted this so badly, as if it was like the Grand Finals or something. Everybody in the game had their opportunity to shine. Everybody got to show off. From FD God taking over Lijiang Tower to Fury playing out of his mind on the Sigma, everybody did something cool basically. The DPS definitely shined the brightest in my opinion though. Sparkle and EQO clashing using such different Genji styles was a sight to behold. The duel between Carpe and Exy was something to marvel at as well. Along with this being one of the best games ever, it also gave us one of the most memorable plays ever thanks to EQ on Rialto. He killed everybody just to keep Philly alive. It's simply unforgettable. But sadly, as usual, the Fusion fell short. They ran out of gas right as the goal was within their reach. Gotta give a big time shout out to the Paris players for clutching up. Exy won player of the game thanks to a ridiculous effort. Outplaying Carpe is good enough on its own, but now you factor in the sheer amount of clutch plays he made in general and oh baby, it instantly becomes an all-time great performance from an all-time great player. This kind of applies for all of Paris in a way though. They had a very long day that probably left all of them feeling absolutely exhausted. To go 5 maps against the Shock, then 7 with Philly right after is quite admirable. That's 7 games in a row against the 2 best teams in the region, basically. I can't even begin to imagine the determination that is required there. Shout out to my man Fielder. That guy basically had to be awake for the entire day, all while playing at a disadvantage on high ping out of Korea. This game is memorable for so many different reasons, and it's one of my all-time favorites. I'm sure it's one we'll be talking about for years to come. Coming up next is the Shanghai Dragons versus the Seoul Dynasty in the May Melee Finals. From one regular season tournament to another. It's a classic. You have a cursed franchise in the Dynasty who have finally made it to a finals after years of failure versus the original cursed team back in 2018. Shanghai had long since turned it around though. Given their recent dominance over the APAC region, it felt like their victory was all but assured. That's why things got so crazy when the Dragons put themselves in a massive hole. To drop not one or two, but 3 maps in a row right off the bat and have their backs against the wall right from the start was unreal. Something felt off. It's like the pressure was getting to them or something. They even reverted back to their old ways with a super embarrassing C9. Most of us thought the APAC bracket would be rather boring, with Shanghai kind of just cruising to the finish. But here comes Seoul flipping the entire world upside down as they did so many times throughout Season 3. The most inconsistent team in the league was hitting one of their peaks. What also got people confused was Shanghai's lineup selection. To bench Fearless for the first 3 maps of this series and Lip for 2 of the 3 maps you lost was a real head scratcher. These two had solidified themselves as key pieces on that lineup. Their impact was great. Stand 1 and DM aren't bad or anything like that, but Lip and Fearless made that team run at maximum capacity at this point in time. It was a bizarre decision made by a coach who has a history of making these types of choices. Was Coach Moon reverting back to his old ways? No. Him and his coaching staff came to their senses before it was too late. And that's where much of the beauty in this game lies. To come back and win 4 straight after subbing Lip and Fearless in is what makes this game so magical. They were heroes. In all likelihood, their efforts saved the Shanghai Dragons from quite the embarrassing defeat. It was a complete morale booster. It's like those first 3 maps didn't even matter. It didn't come in the same dominating fashion that we've grown accustomed to seeing out of them, but it was enough. They rallied all the way back to achieve one of the most wild and exciting reverse sweeps in the history of Pro Overwatch. Lip's stellar Sombra and the Fearless Winston brought it back. I mean, Fearless literally won player of the match for his efforts. His inspirational play served as a wake-up call of sorts. The rest of the team started playing better because of him. That in itself makes this game special. The journey that Fearless took to get to this point is truly inspirational. After leaving Element Mystic, he joins the 0-40 Dragons. Nothing he did was enough to get them out of that terrible situation and at least earn them 1 win that year. So then he takes some time to develop and hone his skills in contenders. Next thing you know, the Dragons call his number up again for Season 3. Now here he is being the hero for this franchise that he couldn't be back in 2018. Him and the boys rally back from defeat. They clutched up in a super tight series that Seoul seriously made them earn. None of those maps came without resistance. Gibraltar came down to the wire. Busan nearly went to a 3rd round, and Kings Row called for desperate measures. Then there's the crown jewel of Junkertown. Both teams literally finished this map, which is incredibly rare to see. It was a battle of clutch plays on both sides. Fearless and Fitz in particular truly played with a fire on this map. It was such amazing Overwatch, but nothing was going to stop the Dragons from making this comeback a reality. There truly were some great calls out of Sideshow and Bren as well. My favorite of which definitely comes when Fleta swapped onto Widow on King's Row, and all you hear Bren yelling out is, "In the headshot, in the headshot." It's always going to play in my head when I think back to that play. The Shanghai Dragons vs Seoul Dynasty May Melee Finals is peak entertainment. Coming in at the number 3 spot is yet another game involving the Paris Eternal. This time I'm talking about their matchup with the San Francisco Shock in the Summer Showdown semifinals. While the game against Philly was a bit more magical, this one has a lot of value entertainment-wise as well. It's not like this one didn't go the distance either, but in a way, this one had a special quality that the Summer Showdown finals was lacking. This one was more of an upset, unlike the finals, which was considered to be a bit more even. Most people consider the Shock to be the clear favorites to win this tournament. They won the previous one rather convincingly and hadn't lost a game since week 8. They simply felt like the clear-cut #1 team in North America despite their lack of Genji usage. Even though Paris had proven to be quite deadly in this meta, they were still seen as the underdogs. After the beating they took in their previous meeting with the Shock, it was tough to see them pulling this off. And that's what kind of makes it just, I don't know, so incredible. Paris being doubted was nothing new, so to pull this off and once again prove idiots like myself wrong is a feel-good situation. They gave the overlords of the league everything they had. Much like their finals matchup with the Fusion, they always responded every single time their opponent knocked them down. It's that refusal to lose that makes these types of memorable games possible. It was a solid team effort plus some heroics from Sparkle that made it all possible. They took advantage of the Shock's lack of Genji. They fully exploited this by using the explosiveness of Genji that the Shock were lacking. With no Genji to match, Striker and Ans had to put in a little bit of extra effort to make up for this disadvantage. It made for a very unique dynamic. It was a true test for the Shock to see if they could win, even if they weren't playing all of the ideal characters in their composition. And it nearly did work. They nearly pulled it off. They were 1 measly % away, basically. That map 5 was a true battle of spirits. After winning Rialto, it felt like Paris were in control, but the Shock just did not want to give up. To this day, I am still amazed as to how they took the first round of Oasis. Sparkle literally killed 4 right as Paris were reaching 99%. So now it's nothing but an all-out panic scramble to get back to the point, and somehow they pull it off. Striker and Choi stalled long enough for everybody else to get back. Paris just couldn't secure a kill onto either of those guys for whatever reason. It is literally one of the best possible examples you can find of the Shock always finding a way to pull it off. This defines their team over the last 2 years. At this point, we're all like, oh my god, did the Shock finally take momentum? Did they break the back of Paris? Nope. As they showed throughout the entire tournament, nothing was going to stop them. It's as if this was the Paris Eternals' destiny or something. They take University with ease, then come through with one of the biggest clutches of the year on Gardens. This part I loved for a few reasons. One, it was a test of resolves for both sides. The Shock were on the verge of losing, but then flip it in their favor as Paris hit 99%. Suddenly, the Shock seemed like they might be able to win with some big ultimates soon to be online, but then Sparkle said, nah, none of what you have matters. My team's gonna win now. Okay, bye. In one of my favorite calls of the year, Sparkle's Dragon Blade seals the deal. And I just loved the reaction from ZP and Jake here. For a split second, it looks like Striker might have clinched it with the Pulse Bomb, but then the Sparkle Dragon Blade comes out, and all you hear from our 2 casters is, Sparkle! Sparkle cuts them apart. Man, it's such a classic. What a rush of adrenaline. Up next on my list is the Boston Uprising versus the Houston Outlaws in Week 3, aka the Toilet Bowl. This game was unironically one of the best of the year. It was so bad that it was, well, good. I'm not sure if that makes any sense, but that's probably the best way for me to explain it. It was such a disaster that it made for peak content. The 2 worst teams in the league at the time clashing head on. It was destined to go all the way. It was a glorious battle of who wanted to lose more. This game got so much hype, but for all the wrong reasons. A lot of us tuned in simply because we were curious to see how much of a disaster this game would be. Needless to say, it more than lived up to expectations. It was essentially a 7-map game of chicken, but instead of the goal of the game being to win and survive, both teams treated it like losing was the ideal outcome. What could possibly be better than a series with 2 ties and the Outlaws bailing on a possible reverse sweep at the very last second after extending the game for like over an hour longer than it could have been and just simply trolling the teams that were supposed to be playing next? The sheer number of miscues brings a smile to my face. So much of this game was extremely sloppy, but I couldn't stop watching it. One of the best parts was, of course, when Jerry fell off the map on Blizzard World. Thank God for Sideshow and Bren who were casting this game, because those 2 enhanced that meme even more by yelling, Jerry, hysterically. Those 2 even admitted to wanting to just yell his name out over and over again because it was so funny at the time.
It's falling very, very, very low. Self-destruct to the back line, Jerry! 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 He tried to make the moves! Jerry! Oh my word, he falls to his death! The counter charge by Muma!
One of my other favorite parts was when Houston decided to sub out Raucus on the final map of the game after winning the previous 2 with him in the lineup. I mean, seriously, Houston could not make up their mind between Raucus and Repel. Just when they finally get some consistency going, they throw it away. Only in the Toilet Bowl, ladies and gentlemen. What's great about this game also is that it only helped create more content afterwards. It truly was the meme that kept on giving. So many amazing Twitter personalities and YouTubers like Bad Patchy Mari and Dividing capitalized on it. Even I joined in on the festivities, even though intended meme content isn't really my thing. A lot of my content ends up becoming a meme, but it's never really intended to be that way. That's how much of a motivator the Toilet Bowl was to creators. Everybody wanted to jump in on it and make something to help spread the joy about this game. That in itself makes this game legendary and unforgettable to many of us fans. And last, but certainly not least, is another clash between the Philadelphia Fusion and the Paris Eternal. This time I'm talking about their matchup from Week 5. Sorry if it's boring to use the same 2 teams multiple times, but I can't deny my feelings for this matchup. It was my earliest match of the year selection before the Summer Showdown happened. I'm not even a fan of either of these teams, but it had me hanging off the edge of my seat the entire time. At the time, it was the most excited I've gotten over a game in quite a bit. This was one of the first key matches that truly caught the interest of the fans. This was the real test to determine if the Paris Eternal were legit. They were already off to a really good start, but Philly were considered to be at the top of the league during this time. They looked really confident, and they were clutch and very determined. While the fan consensus was somewhat split, Paris were the clear-cut underdogs. But what else is new? It didn't help that they let the Outlaws walk all over them just one day prior. Most saw Paris putting up a good fight, but just coming up short. I myself had a hard time picking a winner for this one. Philly seemed like the easier choice to make simply because of their consistency, but something in the back of my mind made me think on this for pretty much the whole week. Sure, Paris were a bit weaker on paper, but they had already proved they were capable of magical things this year. As a result, I kind of felt drawn to them. I rarely like to call for upsets, and I rarely get them right for that matter. Most of the time I try to go with the quote-unquote safe pick. But this one had upset potential written all over it. It was way too tempting to pass up on. I saw it as a chance to look good with my predictions for once in my pathetic life. That in a way kind of drew me to this game and got me more excited for it. Now of course, I based my 3-2 Paris pick on instincts and gut feelings alone because I had no idea what to expect. But it was still a chance to look good among some of my peers nonetheless, and luckily for me, my gamble ended up paying off. But that's not the only thing that made this game so awesome for me personally. It truly was a great game from start to finish. At first, it almost felt like Paris were going to run away with this thing. Exe and Soon were dominating. Exe in particular was putting on a historically great performance. It's like that loss to Houston never even occurred. Instead of trying to think of a solution that only included one of these two DPS players at a time, Paris decided to have them fully join forces. Their combined strength proved to be an ideal match as they took turns blowing away Carpe and Ivy. But then, just when you think it's over, Philly rallies back with 2 convincing map victories in a row to bring us to a decisive map 5, and oh boy was it a good one. Thank the Lord we still had homestands at the time because it really helped to further enhance the experience and overall energy of this matchup. The battle on Oasis Gardens for the tiebreaker is one of my favorite rounds of Overwatch in recent memory. Much like the two halves of this match, Paris took an early lead just for the Fusion to come right back. On one hand, Carpe simply did not want to lose. In signature Carpe fashion, he kept that round alive for as long as humanly possible. Now you have Philly taking over until that final fight in a do-or-die scenario, and both teams continuing to trade back and forth in what felt like an overtime that spanned for all of eternity. That's the beauty of a control map, especially when it's two teams of this caliber going up against one another. It's non-stop action where you can't secure the point unless you get a clean team wipe. If you can't get it fast enough, the stalls are going to keep going on and on and on. Want to know how long that overtime fight lasted for? Over 1 minute. Over 60 seconds of non-stop trading, clutch moments, and stalling. Anybody who watched this game live is going to tell you that it felt way longer than 1 minute. It's as if time had slowed down for the sheer purpose of giving us that heart-pounding action that we all love so much. It was honestly a lot of fun. You have Exe getting kills left and right. 1 second he's sniping Carpe, then the next he's canceling Ivy's tac visor. Or what about Nosemite going absolutely bananas on the Winston? Or maybe you enjoyed when Carpe and Alarm just kept giving it all they had to keep their team in that fight. So much happened all in such a short amount of time, and that's part of what makes this game so memorable. This game is at its best when the situation is chaotic and unpredictable, which is a theme you're going to find throughout this entire set. Such a fantastic game that sometimes gets lost in the shadow of some of the other great matches of Season 3. Thank goodness for the Philly vs. Paris rivalry. It gave us some of the best content of the year. And with that being said, that's going to wrap it up. Those were in my opinion the 5 best games from Overwatch League Season 3. So, what do you think of my list? And what games would make your personal top 5? Let me know down in the comment section. If you enjoyed this content, it would mean a lot to me if you could give this video a like and subscribe to my channel if you're new. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate your support. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.